The shuttle landed harder than expected. A low metallic groan echoed through the docking bay of the Virellan research cruiser Threxelum, followed by a hiss as the pressure locks sealed. Through the reinforced viewport, the stars glimmered like cold embers, distant and indifferent. Inside, Dr. Ralzek adjusted the straps of his containment suit. The data slate in his upper left hand buzzed with an alert, drawing his attention to the new specimen disembarking from the vessel: a human male, volunteer status, healthy cardiovascular metrics, slightly elevated cortisol. Interesting. Ralzek's lower hands tapped commands into the terminal while his upper ones held the slate. The other researchers gathered behind the glass, buzzing with restrained anticipation. They had all read the anatomical reports. Human skeletal density was uneven, bone brittleness increased with age and diet, and the average fall tolerance was statistically unimpressive. Ralzek, however, had requested a live trial. The human's name was Waylen Stokes. He stepped into the chamber with a confused but composed expression, running a hand through his short brown hair. His jumpsuit bore the Earth Coalition emblem, and a small translator clipped to his collar blinked green. He looked around at the room, sterile, brightly lit, and a bit too silent. Ralzek activated the intercom. "Waylen Stokes, you were briefed on the nature of this research, yes?" Waylen turned toward the voice. "I was told it involved gravity simulations. Nothing dangerous, right?" "Correct. You will be subjected to a series of controlled gravitational drops. We are studying impact absorption and skeletal reaction. No harm will befall you." Waylen gave a short nod, but his fingers twitched at his sides. "You guys got medical equipment, right? Just in case." Ralzek blinked his central eye. "We have full trauma support standing by. Begin when ready." The floor beneath Waylen shifted. With a faint hum, the platform ascended to a height of 3 meters. A thin gel pad extended below. Waylen looked down. "This looks like one of those stunt pads." "Comparable, yes," Ralzek replied. "You may jump." Waylen took a breath and stepped off. The impact was uneventful. He bounced slightly on the pad and sat up, grinning. "That all you got?" The researchers murmured among themselves. Ralzek scribbled notes. "Repeat at 5 meters. By 8 meters, Waylen was beginning to sweat. The impacts were jarring. At 10 meters, the pad shifted into a denser compound to simulate harder landings. Waylen winced on impact and sat up more slowly. "Still with us?" Ralzek asked. "Yeah, just. Maybe he's into the next one," Waylen muttered, rubbing his tailbone. Ralzek nodded to his assistant, who adjusted the ascent. "Next, 12 meters." Waylen braced himself and jumped. He landed hard, the pad giving less than before. He lay there for several seconds, breathing heavily. Ralzek leaned into the mic. "Waylen?" Waylen groaned. "Still here? But that one sucked." "Understood. We will proceed to the next phase tomorrow." The door opened and 2 Virellan medics assisted Waylen to his feet. He didn't protest, but he limped slightly as they guided him out. Ralzek watched carefully, tapping notes into his slate. Later in the medbay, Waylen lay on a diagnostic bed. A Virellan medic named Enzer scanned him with a violet wand. "No fractures detected. Mild soft tissue bruising. Elevated stress markers," Enzer said. Waylen chuckled weakly. "Guess I bounced better than you thought." Enzer tilted his head. "You are not structurally impressive, yet you endure more than projected." Waylen smiled, but only briefly. "That's kind of how we've always had to work. Trial and error. Mostly error." Ralzek reviewed the scan data that evening. It confirmed what he had recorded: no skeletal compromise. He studied the human's bone density again, comparing it to the pre-mission scans. There was no sign of abnormal reinforcement, no augmentations. Just naturally durable. The next day, the tests resumed. Waylen was subjected to lateral drops, angular impacts, and even a rotating fall from a controlled spin. He endured each trial, though with increasing difficulty. By the 4th day, his gait was stiffer and he spoke less. The medics reported strained ligaments in his left knee and a hairline crack in his right scapula. The latter had not shown up immediately but appeared after cumulative stress. Ralzek decided on a pause. "You require recovery time. We will resume in 1 rotation," he informed Waylen. Waylen nodded, wincing as he sat down. "Appreciate it. You guys aren't exactly gentle." Ralzek turned back to his slate. "We are not attempting harm. We are recalibrating our understanding." He left the room before Waylen could reply. That evening, in the observation dome, Ralzek met with Chief Researcher Sorna. The elder Virellan towered over him, her luminescent eyes narrowed. "You are pushing the limits of our tolerance protocols," Sorna said. Ralzek showed her the data. "He has not broken significantly. His resilience exceeds projections. We are learning." Sorna tapped the slate with one of her claws. "You do not understand. These creatures break easily under pressure. Mental, emotional, physical. There is a reason their galactic classification is soft-form sapiens." Ralzek set the slate down. "Then why has he not broken yet?" Sorna didn't answer. 3 days later, Waylen returned to testing. His shoulder was braced and his limp had lessened. Enzer confirmed the bone crack was healing as expected but warned of cumulative stress. Ralzek had planned the final test before recovery, a simulated accident. Waylen would be positioned atop an artificial cliff face inside the 0G chamber. The simulation would fail the safety grip at a randomized moment. The fall would be approximately 25 meters with progressive acceleration. Ralzek stood beside the chamber, watching Waylen climb the narrow platform. "Kind of steep for research," Waylen called out, gripping a handhold. "This mimics an atmospheric descent failure," Ralzek replied. "Remain calm. The system will release on cue." Waylen reached the top, strapped his harness, and waited. The release triggered early. The grip gave way and Waylen dropped like a stone. Ralzek's heart rate monitor spiked. The impact was brutal. Waylen hit the ground with a dull, sickening thud that echoed through the chamber. The safety gel had not deployed fully. A collective gasp rippled through the observation window. Ralzek was already moving. He entered the chamber, Enzer right behind him. Waylen was on his back, unmoving, eyes closed. "Vitals dropping," Enzer said. "Fracture alarms active." Ralzek knelt beside him. "Waylen, can you hear me?" Waylen groaned, barely audible. "That sucked worse than the last one." Ralzek exhaled, then turned to Enzer. "Stabilize him. Transport to trauma bay." They moved fast. Waylen's left femur was broken, right arm dislocated, 3 ribs cracked. Internal bleeding minimal but present. He drifted in and out of consciousness during the transfer. The next 48 hours were tense. Waylen remained sedated, bones reset, fluids replenished. The break in his femur required surgical reinforcement with a synthetic graft. He'd be unable to walk unassisted for at least 10 weeks. Ralzek stood outside the medical bay, staring through the glass. Sorna approached. "You nearly killed him." "He volunteered," Ralzek said quietly. "You promised no harm." "I promise no intentional harm." Sorna tapped the glass. "He will recover. Slowly. But what you've proven is not that humans are brittle. It's that they are breakable yet still survive." Ralzek nodded. "That's what I needed to know." 2 days later, Waylen was awake. Ralzek entered the room, standing beside the bed. Waylen's voice was hoarse. "So, did I pass your test?" "You endured more than we thought possible," Ralzek said. "You did not pass or fail. You simply endured." Waylen closed his eyes. "That's kind of our thing." Ralzek sat beside him. "We would like to study your recovery process in depth. With your consent." Waylen opened one eye. "As long as I don't have to jump off anything else." "No more jumps." "Then yeah. Fine." Ralzek stood, recording the consent. As he left, he heard Waylen mutter, "Next time, just ask me how much it hurts. Don't drop me to find out." Ralzek didn't reply. He didn't need to. The data spoke for itself. By the 4th day in recovery, Waylen had developed a deep resentment for Virellan nutrition gels. He sat upright in the med bay cot, propped by a curved polymer brace that gently supported his back. A tray hovered nearby, carrying 4 translucent cylinders, each a different color, none remotely appetizing. He poked one with a stylus, watching the gel wobble like it had opinions. Enzer entered without knocking, holding a flat diagnostic panel that projected real-time stats across his upper forearm. His lateral eyes flicked toward the untouched tray. "You've not consumed the green compound," he said. Waylen rubbed the back of his neck. "I'd rather chew a power cable. That thing tastes like wet grass and sadness. It promotes calcification. Without it, your femur may heal asymmetrically." Waylen grunted and reached for the tube, plugging his nose before downing it in one go. He gagged halfway through but finished. "You humans have no internal enzyme modulation," Enzer muttered, recording the ingestion. "It is inefficient." "Well, we didn't evolve in a lab," Waylen said, wiping his mouth on the corner of the sheet. "Trial and error. Remember?" Ralzek entered moments later, nodding at Enzer before focusing on Waylen. He held a small, spherical device that pulsed with a soft amber glow. There is a method we wish to try. It promotes cellular cohesion by using directed vibrational fields, he said. Waylen stared at the sphere. You're going to shake my bones back together? In a manner of speaking. I mean, I've had worse, Waylen said, adjusting his leg within the suspension brace. Go ahead. Ralzek activated the orb. A hum filled the room, not loud, but deep, like the sound of thunder too far away to see. Waylen's skin prickled. The sensation wasn't painful, just strange, like standing too close to a subwoofer. After a minute, the hum ceased. Ralzek studied his slate. Bone density is stabilizing. No unexpected deviation. Do I get a sticker? Waylen asked. Ralzek blinked. We do not monitor compliance with adhesives. Waylen chuckled, then winced. His ribs still protested when he laughed. Enzer adjusted the brace at his side. Your sleep cycle has been erratic. Are you experiencing discomfort? Only when I breathe, move, or exist generally, Waylen replied. But I've been through worse. He shifted slowly and pointed at the corner wall. Can I get out of the bed tomorrow? I'm losing my mind staring at the same ceiling pattern. Ralzek glanced at Enzer, who nodded once. You may begin assisted movement tomorrow afternoon, Ralzek said. However, your left femur remains fragile. Pressure must be minimal. Fine. But I'm walking before the week's out, Waylen said. Ralzek tilted his head. That would be statistically improbable. You'll see, Waylen said, folding his arms carefully. We're stubborn like that. The next day, just past second shift, 2 Virellan aides arrived with a mobile exosupport unit. It resembled an insect's hind legs, sleek and black, with a padded harness that cradled Waylen's torso and minimized weight on his lower limbs. They fastened it around him in silence. One adjusted the neural interface while the other calibrated the weight distribution. Waylen clenched his jaw as the system lifted him upright. Pain lanced through his right side, but he didn't cry out. You may attempt forward motion, one of the aides said. Waylen took a tentative step. The exosupport compensated for his weakened leg, redistributing the load across the frame. He took another step, slower, then paused. I feel like a toddler in a mech suit, he muttered. You are moving. That is the objective. He walked the length of the room and back again, each step steadier than the last. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and by the time he returned to the starting point, his breathing had quickened. One of the aides tapped the display. Duration exceeded safe limits. You must rest. Waylen nodded, too tired to protest. That evening, Ralzek reviewed the footage. He slowed the playback, zooming in on the human's gait, the subtle shifts in posture, the way his eyes stayed locked on the floor ahead. Determination even under strain. No hesitation. Sorna entered without ceremony. He is progressing? Ralzek answered without looking up. Faster than predicted. His tissue regeneration is within acceptable margins, but his mental tolerance is atypical. Sorna folded her arms. You sound surprised. I am. She leaned over the console. They were not bred for endurance. They survived by accident. And yet here he is. Ralzek turned to her. You believe this is accidental? I believe we underestimated chaos. The following morning, Waylen stood again. This time without prompting. The aides arrived to find him already upright, adjusting the straps of the exosuit. You were not authorized to attempt this unsupervised, one said, moving toward him. Waylen held up a hand. Relax. I wasn't going anywhere. Just wanted to see if I could stand without the whole circus. The aide scanned him quickly. Elevated heart rate. Mild muscular strain. I'll survive. He walked 5 steps unaided before the pain flared too sharply in his side. He grunted and re-engaged the support system, leaning into it. Ralzek appeared in the doorway, watching. You are exceeding your schedule. Waylen didn't stop. That happen a lot on this ship? No. Then you're welcome. Ralzek stepped closer. Your species has no regenerative advantage. No structural enhancement. And yet you continue. Because stopping doesn't get me home. Ralzek studied him for a moment. Do you believe your survival is a result of will? Waylen exhaled slowly. I think it comes down to knowing you can't quit. Not because someone said not to. Because you just don't. Ralzek turned, leaving without comment. Later that evening, Waylen sat alone on the edge of the bed, legs dangling. The exosuit rested beside him, powered down. His muscles ached, his ribs throbbed, and fatigue clung to him like a second skin. But he was upright. The lights dimmed to evening mode. Outside, the stars rotated slowly as the cruiser adjusted its orientation. A figure approached, not Virellan. Smaller, cloaked in layered fabric with a thin, angular face. It was one of the observer caste, silent watchers from a distant polity who had taken interest in the event logs. "You are the human," the figure said. Waylen nodded. "Last I checked. I have reviewed your fall. The protocol breach was significant. I'm aware." The observer sat across from him, legs tucked beneath its robe. "You should have perished. Probably. But you did not." "Also true." The observer tilted its head. "Why?" Waylen thought for a long moment. "Because I didn't want to. That is not sufficient. It never is until it works." The observer was silent. Then, softly, "You are not what they expected." Waylen leaned back, wincing. "Neither are you." They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sound the soft hum of the life support systems. Finally, the observer stood. "I will return." Waylen gave a tired nod. When he was alone again, he closed his eyes. His body hurt, his bones ached, and there was still a long road ahead. But he'd walk today. And tomorrow he'd walk farther. Waylen's first steps without the exosuit happened during a quiet shift change nearly 2 weeks after his fall. The medbay was dim, the overhead lights reduced to a soft blue, and most of the staff were occupied recalibrating the onboard diagnostic modules. No ceremony. No audience. Just him, a parallel bar frame, and the slow grind of gravity against healing bones. He gripped the rails, drew in a shaky breath, and moved his right foot forward. It landed flat. His left leg followed with a delayed, careful slide. Pain flared at the hip and knee, but it didn't spike, more a warning than a scream. Behind him, Enzer stood with a monitoring wand, tail twitching once. "You will tear a ligament if you shift weight improperly," he said, not looking up from the readout. Waylen exhaled through his teeth. "I'll scream if I sit still another minute." "You screamed 3 nights ago. You forgot your pain blocker." "No, I rationed it. I just didn't think I'd need it after a dream about climbing stairs." Enzer blinked slowly. "Dreams do not require musculature." "Tell that to my spine," Waylen muttered. He took 2 more steps, then paused, gripping the parallel bars as sweat dampened the collar of his shirt. His shoulders trembled under the effort. "You are overreaching," Enzer said. "I'm standing," Waylen replied. "That's not nothing." The door behind them hissed open, and Ralzek entered with a small projection disc under one arm. Without greeting, he placed it on the floor. A soft glow expanded into a hovering display, a human skeleton slowly rotating, annotated with segmented data points in Virellan script. The femur was highlighted in amber. "You have reached 74% structural cohesion," Ralzek said. "Your projected recovery window has shortened to 9 days." Waylen leaned against the bars. "That's not bad." Ralzek glanced at Enzer. "His balance coordination is lagging behind musculoskeletal repair." "Because I'm tired," Waylen said. "And your gravity control in this wing is off by a fraction." "I feel it." Enzer adjusted his instrument. "We recalibrated 2 rotations ago. You didn't account for shift phase fluctuation through the corridor junction. It's subtle, but I feel it in my ankles every time I pass the 3rd arch." Ralzek's second left hand twitched. "You were suggesting gravitational asymmetry." "I'm suggesting your floors slope a bit when you're not looking." Enzer looked at Ralzek, then back at Waylen. "That's not possible." Waylen pushed off the bars and stood unsupported for half a second before catching himself. "You scan for macro vibrations, but your sensors miss micro torsion. Human joints are sensitive to those. We're not the most graceful species, but we notice when something's off." Ralzek turned toward the wall console and typed a command. A low-frequency scan initiated, sweeping through the corridor beyond the med bay. The system paused halfway through, then emitted a faint chime. "0.004 tilt variance," he said. Enzer leaned over his shoulder. "That can't be right." No structure drift was reported. Ralzek turned to Waylen. "How did you detect this?" "I didn't detect it. My legs did." "Try walking with shattered bones on a crooked floor and see how fast you notice," he said, then slowly sat back on the cot. Ralzek studied the rotating scan again. "We compensate for gravimetric anomalies during structural alignment. But this discrepancy falls below our threshold for concern." "Maybe for you," Waylen said. "But I'm walking on bones you thought would never hold weight again. Your thresholds might need adjusting." Ralzek deactivated the projection. "We will update the calibration parameters." "You're welcome," Waylen said, wiping his face with a towel. Hours later, after the floor variance had been corrected, Ralzek returned with another request. Waylen was seated at a small table now, legs elevated, a nutrient band wrapped around his arm. We would like to conduct a controlled stress test, Ralzek said. Not physical. Cognitive under discomfort. Waylen raised an eyebrow. You want to annoy me and see if I break? Ralzek blinked. We want to observe your decision-making while pain thresholds are moderately elevated. Waylen gestured at his leg. You think that's gonna go anywhere good? You have demonstrated that pain does not halt your function. This is uncommon among vertebrates with comparable neural density. Waylen winced as he adjusted his leg. Fine. What's the test? Ralzek brought a thin console pad and placed it on the table. A series of images flickered across the screen, abstract patterns, shifting colors, lines that pulsed in irregular rhythms. Identify the matching sequences under time pressure, he instructed. The patterns will rotate every 5 seconds. Waylen stared at the screen. You're giving me a vision test while I'm hopped up on recovery meds and sleep-deprived? Yes. Cool. Let's make it weird. The test began. Patterns flickered rapidly, sometimes disorienting, sometimes familiar. Waylen's pupils adjusted slowly and he tapped sequences as they repeated. His fingers were sluggish at first but gained speed. After 3 minutes, sweat beaded on his forehead again. The pain in his leg flared in sync with the pressure of his posture. He shifted and kept going. At 6 minutes, he missed 3 patterns in a row. Ralzek made a note. Your error rate has increased. Because your test is designed like a migraine in a blender, Waylen said, rubbing his temples. Would you like to stop? No. Why not? Waylen didn't answer. He kept going. At the 10-minute mark, he leaned back, eyes bloodshot. I think I just saw a pattern from my nightmares. Ralzek shut off the console. You reached a completion score of 81%. That good? For a subject under duress, yes. Waylen rested his head on the table. Remind me to never agree to anything involving cognitive thresholds again. Ralzek stood silently for a few seconds. You could have stopped at any time. I know. You continued despite measurable discomfort and cognitive fatigue. That's the whole point, isn't it? Ralzek didn't reply. 3 days later, Waylen walked without support for the first time. No exosuit, no bars. Just short steps across the rehab chamber under Enzer's watchful gaze and the silent observation of a handful of researchers behind the glass wall. He wore a soft brace around his knee and a thin wrap around his ribs. His posture was uneven, but he moved without hesitation. Ralzek watched from the upper gallery, arms folded. The data slate in his lower hand recorded every step, every shift in weight, every pause. But what struck him most wasn't the movement, it was the expression. Waylen wasn't gritting his teeth or mouthing curses. He was smiling, faintly, as though the act of walking without falling had become its own private victory parade. When he finished the circuit and sat again, Enzer approached with the scanner. No structural strain. You've exceeded expectations. Waylen leaned back and looked toward the observation glass. I'm done, right? Ralzek descended the stairs from the gallery. Yes. Your participation is complete. Waylen nodded. Then I'll need a shuttle. You wish to return to Earth? Not immediately. But I want to leave this ship. No offense. Enzer tilted his head. You distrust us? No. But I've seen enough ceilings and alien diagnostic tools to last a lifetime. Ralzek stepped closer. You have altered our understanding of human limits. I didn't do it to prove anything, Waylen said. I just didn't want to stay broken. Ralzek reached into his coat and handed over a small hexagonal chip. This contains a full transcript of your recovery. It will be distributed to our medical academies. Waylen took the chip and examined it. So I'm a case study now. A benchmark. He slipped the chip into his pocket and stood. His balance wobbled for a second, but he steadied himself. Well then, he said, stretching carefully. Benchmarks walking out. Ralzek didn't stop him. He didn't need to. The human had no enhancements. No regenerative mutations. No structural advantages. And yet he had walked out of a chamber that should have left him crippled. The data would be studied. The results would be debated. But the conclusion had already formed, quiet and indisputable. Humans broke. And then got up anyway.